There has always been a love of cars and driving with my family, the Powers. Of my grandparents on my father's side, a few of the cars that I can mention that come to mind that they had over the years since the war was a baby Austin. My grandmother, Mary Power, has mentioned they had a love of American cars and certainly had a Buick, a big saloon car. And there is a very good story of how my father, my grandfather, Paul Power, first came to owning a Bentley. His friend Nat Nicholson, I believe, suggested to my grandfather, why, for the price of a new Morris Minor, don't you buy a second-hand Bentley? So that's what my grandfather did. And he had two models of the Bentleys Mark V from the 1950s and 60s. And as a child, I often remembered my father and his family meeting our grandparents in Dungarvan town after Mass, and we, as children, were allowed to sit on the front seat of the Bentley and to push the ignition button to start it. And we often went to Flynn's, the newspaper shop on the square in Dungarvan, where Sunday newspapers were bought and children got ice cream. My father, Ian, from his 20s onwards, had a love of motor cars, and some of his earliest cars were Triumph TR3 open top, he had a couple in succession of the early Citroen sedan cars, and as a child I remember my father having a Peugeot 404, a Humber Sceptre, a Triumph Dolomite, and then in succession we had two Citroen GS's. The first Citroen GS my father had was a red one, and it was one of the first Citroen GS's owned in the country of Ireland. And I remember we were travelling as a family in it, and another Citroen GS came against us, and we, both drivers, flashed each other. The second Citroen GS my father had was blue, and my brothers and I were all given driving lessons in that particular car. After that blue Citroen GS, my father had a Renault 20. And all along, my mother ran and owned a Ford Anglia, registration BKI 50. That particular Ford Anglia was eventually, through old age, taken off the road. My mother was advised by the garage, the CAB in Dungarvan, which is gone now, to sell it, and I'm not sure what they did with it afterwards. My mother's first car, one I do not remember her having, was a Morris Minor, and I believe the story went, I was often told, that one day my mother was in the town during market day, Dungarvan that is, and one of the cattle jumped up on the bonnet of that car. That's that story.